Welcome to Canada's most irreverent talk show. This is the Andrew Lawton Show, brought to you by True North.
Hello and welcome to you all. This is another edition of Canada's most irreverent talk show. You're tuned in to the Andrew Lawton Show here on True North. It is Tuesday, September 20th, 2022, and we have some breaking news that just came in like 5 seconds ago across my desk. So if you are reading the little description on YouTube or Facebook, this is not at all what I mentioned in there, because I want to talk about this for just a couple of moments, and then we'll get on to the really fun stuff. But Canada is, according to the Globe and Mail, going to drop the COVID-19 vaccine requirement for entering the country on September 30th. So in 10 days' time, you will no longer need to be fully vaccinated to enter the country. They're also on September 30th going to make ArriveCan optional, and they are going to end random testing on arrivals, September 30th. Now, they are, according to this story, keeping the mask and the mask mandate in place for trains and planes because it's Canada. You can't actually ever believe that you're totally free of the restrictions of COVID, Stan. But if you're tuning in, if you've had a loved one that lives in another country that hasn't been able to come here for 2 years, they will be able to, barring any other changes, on September 30th. So I want to read the actual announcement and the actual order. This is coming from a Globe and Mail story that's been leaked by a couple of quote-unquote unnamed government sources. I believe the story. There's been little drips and drabs of something like this happening. But I want to actually read it before I say what's going on, because we know that the government has said that it's working to a quote-unquote evolved definition of fully vaccinated. We know they're talking about having up-to-date vaccination, where having 2 doses of Pfizer or Moderna doesn't actually mean all that much. But we also know they're seeing Canadians grow more and more wary. And I'd say grow more and more weary, too. The Canadians are weary and wary right now. We're all the waries of, not Aaron Wary at CBC. We're not turning into him. But we're weary of the restrictions. We're wary of government making them. And I think government realizes this, that it no longer has the legitimacy to impose all of these different restrictions and mandates on people. So September 30th, I'm getting this from the Globe and Mail. I also have heard other whispers of this, and we'll have some updates as well as the show goes on. So if to the producers working behind the scenes, if you see anything on this, shoot me a note before the show ends. What I wanted to talk about originally, which now I guess seems relatively inconsequential, but still, I try to give the people what they want, is the descent of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau into what we can only effectively call Jukebox Justin. If you haven't seen the clip right now, where the heck have you been? But here it is, just for posterity. Here is our Prime Minister in the lobby of the Corinthia Hotel in London. So that was theoretically Bohemian Rhapsody. Again, he didn't even try for the really high note, which is unfortunate. I feel if you're going to do Bohemian Rhapsody, you owe it to yourself, you owe it to Queen, and you owe it to the people watching to go up instead of going down. But Justin Trudeau decided to play it safe because, you know, apparently there is still some semblance of shame and self-awareness that when he is in the United Kingdom for Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II's state funeral, which is a rather somber affair for a member of the Commonwealth and for all of the other leaders of government and heads of state there. And he decides, you know what the world really needs right now to break through the sadness of Her late Majesty's passing is an unsolicited vocal solo by the Prime Minister of Canada in a London hotel lobby. Now, we have to talk about the baby steps towards progress here. We have to talk about the little victories. He was not in blackface. This is a little victory. He was not wearing the outfit that would be more fitting on a Bollywood bridesmaid. Again, step in the right direction. He wasn't throwing himself down the Corinthia's grand lobby staircase, which is his go-to party trick, as we've learned for much of his adult and adolescent life. No, he was just singing. So you may say, well, it's not a huge deal. That's been the Canadian media's response to it. But what's interesting is that when you look at how other people around the world see it, they actually are embarrassed by this. They think that Jukebox Justin has in fact embarrassed Canada on the world stage once again. This was, just to give one example here, a clip from Jesse Waters' show on Fox News.
Justin Trudeau decided the best way to honor the Queen's legacy would be to fly to London, wear a T-shirt, get drunk at a British pub, and do karaoke.
Now, I thought that clip was a bit longer, but nevertheless, what was happening here is Justin Trudeau decided to do this. Now, I don't know if he was drunk or not. I think when a lot of people, like the Daily Mail, used the word drunk as well in its headline, and Jesse Waters used the term drunk, I think what a lot of people need to realize is he does that sober. Like, he does that sober. So you think that just based on behavior alone, he's drunk. No, he actually does that sort of stuff. So let's not give him credit that this was alcohol induced, when I think we can say this was just Trudeau induced. But Jukebox Justin decides to sing Bohemian Rhapsody. And the foreign media, whether it's Fox News, the Daily Mail, even the Telegraph in the UK, which is not an explicitly right-wing paper, they were talking about how this was an embarrassment. And you look at Canadian media, and what Canadian media decided to do was really just start making excuses. You had all of the usual suspects from CBC and CTV line up and saying, is this really what we're worried about? Does anyone really care? Is this really a problem? And look, as far as top 10 scandals of Justin Trudeau, certainly even top 10 scandals of Justin Trudeau embarrassing Canadians in the world, on the world stage, I'd say this is relatively low on the list. But that's far more of a reflection of Justin Trudeau than it is of the circumstances, that he's done just many things that are more embarrassing than this. And this isn't really something that, in the grand scheme of things, stands up as being the most embarrassing. No, I think India was much worse. I think the whole package of India scandals and controversies, not just the costumes, but also inviting a convicted terrorist along, I think was fairly embarrassing. I think Trudeau's many snubs or attempted snubs at Donald Trump were embarrassing. Now, those ones maybe curried him some favor a little bit, but I think what we're talking about here is a guy who continues to do this. And my question is there anyone on his team that is prepared to say no to him? Is there anyone on his team that's prepared to say, you know, listen, Prime Minister, I know you really want to sing. Maybe you could sing in your room. Maybe you could just go on YouTube and, you know, Google Bohemian Rhapsody karaoke, and you could just have a little quiet, contemplative solo to yourself. Why do you need to be the center of attention in this way at Her late Majesty's state funeral? Again, I mean, if he were to do this on some rant, like he's in New York right now for the UN. If he were to go to some New York karaoke bar and do this, I would probably roll my eyes, but I'd say, all right, well, who the heck cares? He's there for a state funeral. It's an official state visit. He is representing Canada, not just in a figurative sense, but in a literal sense. And we're all to believe that the Canadian media is only interested in defending him. They're not even interested in covering the story. They're not interested in really getting to the bottom of the why. Maybe you can't. Maybe that would be a fruitless task. But it's absolutely insane that everyone else around the world, even as far as journalists are concerned, is prepared to say the obvious. But it's the epitome of, like, the emperor is wearing no clothes here with the Canadian media. They're all, I mean, we're all the kid looking, saying, I mean, he's clearly an idiot. And they're all saying, oh, well, no, it's great. Everything's fine. He's wearing the clothes. He's doing this, like Scaramouche, Scaramouche. Yeah. And look, I find that it's not about joyless pearl clutching. It's not about saying, oh, the Prime Minister is not supposed to have a sense of humor. He's not supposed to let loose. I mean, when Stephen Harper decided to bust out and sing and play the piano, it was always at an appropriate point. It was at an appropriate point. And that's the difference here between what's happening in the Justin Trudeau context. And by the way, let's just take a look at the reception he's getting, because I remember when he was getting heckled and booed and jeered during the federal election campaign, he blamed it on the unvaccinated. He blamed it on the far right, and he blamed it on people sowing discontent and discord and all of that. But this is what happens when Justin Trudeau is walking around in England, a foreign country. Now, I have a lot of family in the United Kingdom. I've spent a lot of time in the United Kingdom. If you haven't, that's okay. Boo is not a Britishism for "we love you, Justin, keep up the good work." Yeah, you may think it is. You may think that boo is just British for "we love you, vote Liberal, build back better." But believe it or not, in England, boo means the same as it means here, which is "we do not like you." Now, do I believe that people should be jeering in front of a world leader in their own country when they're there for a state visit to pay respects to the sovereign? No, I don't believe that we should politicize that. But I also feel that if he is politicizing it first, if he shoots first on the politicization game, they have a right to say, you know what, we're going to give you a bit of a heckle when you're walking from point A to point B. So the aspect of this that is far more unique than Justin Trudeau just doing this is the media response to it, or the media non-response. And at first, this was only circulating on social media. And I was amazed. I mean, the PMO explained this. The first comment they gave was to Joe Warmington of the Toronto Sun. And they said, well, yes, but the reason he did it was because the pianist had the Order of Canada. Like their explanation was, well, yes, but it was like an Order of Canada recipient that was playing the piano. And then lots of people were joining in. So why wouldn't Justin Trudeau join in? Why wouldn't the Prime Minister just start belting away 2 nights before the Queen's funeral? And I'm like, well, yeah, when you put it like that, I guess he really had no choice. Isn't that the case? That, this all just sort of happened. So eventually, if this sort of gains steam, what we're going to find is, like every other Justin Trudeau scandal, this is going to be a learning opportunity for all of us, everyone except him. It'll be, well, I can see how we all need to learn to do better. And we all need to think of when it's appropriate to sing. And we all need to reflect on when it's appropriate to belt out Bohemian Rhapsody and whatnot. And by the way, this is neither here nor there, but I have to point it out. If you're going to do a song in this sort of forum, let's not do the most overused song by Queen at karaoke. Don't do Bohemian Rhapsody. If you like that, do Under Pressure. Don't Stop Me Now. Don't Stop Me Now would have been a great one, except the problem is that Justin Trudeau couldn't get away with singing Don't Stop Me Now because all of us would have tried to stop him very early on. So I guess that's where we're going with this. In any case, I wanted to shift away from London hotel solos back to Canadian politics on home soil here. We covered a little over a week ago the Conservative Party of Canada's leadership results, in which Pierre Poilievre very handily won the Leadership Party of Canada on the first ballot. And what we see now is, I think, a big question about the place that the Conservative Party of Canada has in Canadian politics and what that means for the broader conservative movement and libertarian movement. So I wanted to bring in Maxime Bernier, leader of the People's Party of Canada and a good friend of this program, on to discuss this. Maxime, good to talk to you. Thanks very much for coming on today. Maxime, can you hear me?
Hello, Andrew. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Welcome. Thank you for
coming on.
So let's start with the big question here. I mean, the PPC had a very strong showing in the last election compared to 2019. You nearly tripled the share of the vote you had. When you are looking at the road forward, how do you expand on that? How do you grow the party even more? Oh, I don't know if we have Maxime Bernier. I see Maxime. I don't hear Maxime. All right, we will hopefully get that sorted out. I apologize for that. Believe it or not, I should just say on a technical note, we were having some issues with the former service that we used to do our live broadcast. So we did a bunch of research and found a new service that we could use, and we tested it. We did all that other stuff. And here we are now and are experiencing another problem. So that one may not have been with the system. That may have been a user error. We're going to look into that and get Maxime Bernier back on the show any moment now. But I do want to just discuss in general the context here, because we had a poll that came out earlier today, and it was from Nanos. And I want to just get the numbers accurate here, because in this poll, we saw that the Conservative Party of Canada had 31% support. Now, this with a sample size of 1,000. And it is a poll that had again, a sample size of 1,000. It was conducted over September 9th to September 16th. And this is, I think, an important window because this is when people knew that Pierre Poilievre was going to be the Conservative leader. And 31% said yes, they would vote Conservative if the election were held today. 28% said they would vote for the Liberals. So we're still talking about within the margin of error here, but it means that all of like the really evil, scary fear mongering of the Conservatives hasn't necessarily translated to polling. And again, it's one poll early on. But in this poll, we also see the People's Party of Canada at, I think, 3%. So a bit of a decrease from the last time. So I want to talk about this. I think we have Maxime Bernier on again. Maxime, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much, Andrew.
All right, good to talk to you, Maxime. So I was just talking earlier about this poll that came out from Nanos today showing the Conservatives at 31%, PPC at 3%. It's one poll. You never want to extrapolate too much. But what do you think is the strength or health right now of the PPC?
Well, it's a big difference between us and the Conservative Party of Canada. I believe that, there's a lot of difference between us and the Conservative. They have a new leader, yes. That new leader, Pierre Poilievre, is more popular than Andrew Scheer or the other leaders that they had before. And I believe that Pierre Poilievre is more intelligent than O'Toole and is a better communicator. So I think that's a good news for the Conservative Party of Canada. But also, the big difference between us and the Conservative is the way that we are doing politics. As you know, we are doing politics based on ideas and conviction. And, it's not because something is not popular or politically correct that we won't speak about it. We will speak about the values that we believe are very important for the future of this country. And the Conservative and Poilievre are doing politics based on survey and polling. And Poilievre was very popular during the last leadership contest because he spoke like a Conservative. Actually, O'Toole did that also. And he said, I'm the true blue. And Poilievre, you need actually to speak like a Conservative during a Conservative contest. And now Poilievre will want to have more support. And I believe that they will do some compromise with their ideas. But also, he's not speaking about something that is very important for Western Canadians and the alienation from Western Canadians. They're fed up with the federal government that is not respecting the Constitution and doesn't do anything to build pipelines. And also, Poilievre didn't speak about the equalization formula. That is very important for all Canadians. We must be less generous. We must change the formula. So we have a lot of policies that are very different than the Conservative. I can add climate change. Pierre won't impose a carbon tax. I understand that, but he will have to impose more regulations. For us, we won't sign the Paris Accord. We will withdraw from that Paris Accord. So there's a lot of distinction. And we'll see what will happen in the near future.
I heard anecdotally from a lot of people in the last two federal elections, but certainly the last federal election when the PPC did very well, almost tripled its vote share over 2019. And I heard people say things like, well, I'm going to vote PPC, but if someone like Pierre Poilievre or Leslyn Lewis were the leader of the Conservatives, if someone like Pierre Poilievre or Leslyn were there, I would vote Conservative. So now that is there. And a lot of people, for example, that were supporters of the convoy and supporters of the PPC have now a choice between two politicians who were there and speaking about mandates. So how do you recapture or hold on to some of those people that voted PPC that were actually not supporters of the Conservatives last time, but might be this time? Oh, I believe we have lost Maxime Bernier again. He is still he's faded to black on the screen, so he's actually doing a very good Justin Trudeau impersonation. But in any case, we'll get Maxime back there very shortly. And I do very much apologize for these technical issues, folks. I guess one thing that I would point out on this, which is important, is that there's a big discussion about whether the PPC support in 2019. And let's actually just talk about 2021. This was the last election. Whether the PPC support was an example of building on 2019 or whether it was really a case of the right party at the right time with vaccine mandates and vaccine passports and a lot of angst and frustration about the pandemic, and people channeling that to really the only party and the only leader who was talking about that. And that was Maxime Bernier. The Conservatives were nowhere to be found on that issue. So the question is, in 2021, when you had a lot of people that said, yeah, you know what, I wish Aaron O'Toole were talking about vaccine passports. Talking about them in a way that was critical of them. I wish Aaron O'Toole was talking about vaccine mandates. Maxime Bernier is, they vote for him. That is a big, big difference of, I think, the political discussion that will be taking place when the next election comes. And I mean, again, there's always this possibility of having some snap fall election that we could see that comes, the end of October or perhaps in November. But I've said on the record, I don't think we're looking at a fall election here. I think we're probably looking at an election that's going to be in a year, in 2 years, maybe even in 3 years. It all depends on whether this liberal NDP alliance / not really coalition, but kind of a coalition holds up. And I mean, the NDP is just perennially afraid of its own shadow. They don't want an election, which is why you get the NDP jumping up and down saying, how dare the Liberal and Conservatives do this? And I'm like, well, Mr. Singh, you're the one who's propping up the Liberals here. You're the one that's keeping them in power. So all of this is to say that right now we are looking at a political environment that is still very much shaped by the COVID situation, a political environment that is still very much shaped by the pandemic environment and people that are not happy with the restrictions. And even with that story I mentioned a few moments ago at the top of the show from the Globe and Mail, that the government is, as of September 30th, going to drop the vaccine requirement for entry. The whole point is that this stuff still hangs over people like the sword of Damocles. It still stands up like this big, giant fear that we're going to be plunged right back into the world of 2020 and 2021. And again, we have, I believe, and I'm crossing my fingers here, Maxime Bernier back on the line. Maxime, thank you for your patience. The question that I was asking you before we got disconnected was how you take the showing that the PPC had in 2021, nearly triple what it had in 2019, and build on that when a lot of PPC supporters that I've spoken to said, I would vote for the Conservatives if they had a leader like Pierre Poilievre or if they had a leader like Leslie Lewis. And the Conservatives do have Pierre Poilievre now.
I believe that we will grow. Actually, we did that in the past from 0% in 2018, 1.6 in 2019, 5% at the last election. You're right. And I don't know what will be the issue for the next election. And I believe that we won't be an election in this fall. It can be in a year or 2 years. That being said, if it's the immigration, we are the only party that is speaking for saying no to mass immigration, for sustainable immigration. Poilievre and Trudeau and Jack Mead are on the same wagon on that. They want more and more immigrant. That can be a subject of our next campaign. It can be also the economy. We don't know. But we have strong policy, and that can be the future of our country. As you know, right now in Alberta, there's an independence party in Alberta. 32% of Albertans want to separate, and we are the only national party that is addressing that, saying we need to have a radical decentralization. We need to give more autonomy to provinces. We are speaking about that. So I don't know what will be the main issue at the next election, but we will be there. We have the same platform, and that will be the same one. And I don't know what will be the platform of the Conservative Party of Canada, because like I said before, they will do polling and focus group before the election. And after that, they will do some compromise, try to have more votes in Ontario and Quebec. As you know, there's more seats in the GTA than in all Alberta. So that's why let's wait and see. But for us, people understand we are doing politics differently. We will always be the same and always fight for what we believe, for a smaller government in Ottawa that will respect provincial jurisdiction and respect our Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
I know it's a question you get asked all the time, and I know it's an annoying question, but I think the audience also is very interested in your answer to it. So I hope you'll indulge me, Maxime. But the idea of a merger, because we've seen the right split in the past in history when the Reform Party was born out of the Progressive Conservative Party, and eventually they came together as the Conservative Party of Canada. What are the circumstances that would need to happen for a PPC Conservative Party of Canada merger if something like that would ever happen under your leadership?
I want to use the example that you just used at the past, the Reform Party of Canada. Yes, the Reform Party of Canada did merge with the, at the end, it was the Progressive Conservative Party, but in between the Canadian Alliance, as you know. But what is the legacy of Stephen Harper? We had 10 years, and I was part of that, of a conservative government. What is his legacy? I can name only ending the wheat board, that's it. And so, we won't do that mistake. We will always fight for what we believe. We cannot trust the Conservative Party of Canada. They're conservative when they are in the leadership contest, and after that, we don't know. With O'Toole, we knew he went all the way to the left. Poilievre will do that maybe a little bit later. So it's not my responsibility to help elected conservative candidates. My responsibility is to help our candidates, our PPC candidates, to be elected. So answering your question, we won't merge, because what happened in the past, we are the new Reform Party. 90% of our platform, it's based on the old blue book, the Reform Party. So we won't do any compromise with our ideas, and we won't do the mistake that Preston Manning did.
One thing that I would ask you about the PPC, and I know that you have a lot of things in your platform that touch on a number of issues, from Indigenous issues to ending supply management and so on. But last time, overwhelmingly, when I went to your rallies and I covered you on an Alberta tour, and when I interviewed you, the biggest topic was vaccine mandates and vaccine passports. And this was an issue that no one else in Canadian politics was speaking up on. It was only the PPC, and I commend you for that, Maxime. If those issues are not live issues in the next election, how do you get people who might have only been introduced to the PPC because of that to stick around?
I think the ending the mandates, it's not, we still have to work on that. Actually, tomorrow I'll be in the court in Ottawa with Brian Petford. We are fighting for our rights to freely travel across this country against the vaccine mandates that Trudeau imposed to us on unvaccinated Canadians. And it's important to do that fight in the court, because we want to have a legal precedent, and like that it will be impossible for any government to impose these kind of mandates on Canadians. So we are doing that fight also in the court. But yes, you're right. Maybe at the next election it won't be COVID-19, and I hope it won't. But that being said, there's a big difference with us. Climate change. Now we are living in a climate hysteria everywhere. We're the only party that is saying no, and we will withdraw from the Paris Accord. Immigration, it's another big challenge. Mass immigration at the Roxham Road in Quebec. People are still crossing our border illegally. We are the only party that is speaking against mass immigration, for sustainable immigration, a maximum of 150,000 a year, with the big majority of them being skilled immigrants. The Conservative won't speak about that because it's not popular. Like Poilievre didn't speak against the mandate because it was not popular in 2020. Poilievre is an opportunist politician, and he's speaking about things when they're popular. For him, the most important is not to be on the right side of the current issue, is to be on the popular side. And that's why I said the Conservative Party is intellectually and morally corrupt. They don't fight for real conservative values, and we are doing that. And that's why, and I'm very pleased right now that Poilievre is speaking against the mandate. It's a sign that the freedom fighters, that truckers, that ourselves and all the freedom fighters across the country won the battle, because yes, we were a French minority in the beginning in 2020, and after 2 years, now we are part of the majority. So for Poilievre, he can speak about it, and he's doing that. So I don't know what will be the issue next time, but the PPC will be there always to fight for a smaller government in Ottawa that will respect our rights and respect the autonomy of every province.
Just before I let you go, Maxime, I wanted to ask you about this little victory you had in Saskatchewan this week. Now, oftentimes it's hard to affect change directly when you're not in Parliament, but you and your one of your lieutenants in Western Canada, Kelly Lawrence, had posted this on Twitter, and it did very well. That the Saskatchewan Public Health line, I think it's like 511 or 811 or something, had on its main menu, press 1 if you want to speak to a nurse, press 2. Number 5 was if you want help with assisted death, you press 5. And this is the number that people were dialing if they had a mental health crisis as well. And in your advocacy on this, they've actually removed this now.
Yeah, I'm very pleased with that. It took them a couple of weeks, but the common sense has prevailed, and that's important. They were promoting assisted suicide, and when they're doing that actively, the provincial government was doing that actively. When you know that healthcare jurisdiction right now and healthcare system, it's not working well. We have wait time for surgeries and long waiting lists. So that being said, when you're promoting that, and the goal of that number 811 is for you to have a medical assistance, not to have somebody that will tell you, hey, if you want to die, by the way, we can help you.
Yeah,
so
just press 5.
Yeah, press 5. I was very pleased that they understand, and that was a victory for us, but not only us. Common sense people, Canadians, that called the minister and said, hey, you must stop that. I voted for that legislation, euthanasia, when I was a member of parliament, but now we need to change that legislation because it must be more restrictive. Now they're promoting that, and it's not only at the end of the life when it was supposed to be, when you have an extreme medical situation. And I think that we must review that legislation to have put more restrictions on the use of that option for Canadians.
Maxime Bernier, leader of the People's Party of Canada. Always good to talk to you, Maxime. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you, Andrew. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
All right. And you as well, Maxime. And again, I'm sorry about the technical issues we encountered there, but glad we moved beyond those. Maybe it's like C11 in action already, where you bring a PPC leader on and it just like the line goes dead. So not that like Justin Trudeau is standing with the scissors, but at the Ethernet cable. But in any event, we have also, by the way, I should say, in the interest of fairness here, we cover the broader conservative with a small c movement in this country. We've asked Pierre Poilievre to come on the program now that he is conservative leader, and the spot is available to him should he decide to take us up on it. We're very glad that Maxime Bernier did, and we're good to talk. It's good to talk to him. So I just want to, before we wrap things up here, talk about this very small. Actually, it's not a small issue, and I'm sure we'll delve into this later in the week on Fake News Friday, Harrison Faulkner and I. But CBC ran a story yesterday. It's a slippery slope, how young men fall into online radicalization. Now, when I saw this, I'm like, oh, it's going to be another one of these like evil far right sort of things. And that's exactly what it was. But they took it and went like so bizarrely with it here. And if you read the story, it centers around this one guy who's 21, a man by the name of Reed Brown, who's like a reformed right-wing radical, I guess. He says, or the article says, Reed Brown remembers the first time he got sucked in by the algorithm. He was just 13, watching videos after school when YouTube started pushing him to controversial content. Ooh, see that? It's controversial content. As time went on, the videos became increasingly extreme, says Brown. Now, what does he mean? What's an extreme video? Well, as he says, it started out pretty benign. You're watching something about teen fashion, and then the next thing you know, the algorithm would push you to a propaganda video about Adolf Hitler. Oh, wait, no. Hang on. What is this? Oh, the next thing you know, the algorithm would push you to a Ben Shapiro video. Okay, but then did it get extreme? No, that's where it ends. So he saw a Ben Shapiro video on YouTube, and he's concerned that it was radicalizing and it was extreme. And this is how the CBC reporter decides to editorialize this. Though Shapiro describes himself as a conservative political commentator, his views are controversial, and some are outright discriminatory. He suggested, for example, that transgender people suffer from a mental disorder, in scare quotes. Well, whatever you think about trans politics and policies, gender dysphoria, which is at the core of transgenderism, is in the DSM, which is the Diagnostic Guide for Psychiatric Conditions. So it's not outright discriminatory, it's a statement of fact. Now, how you respond to that fact is something that we can all disagree on or agree on, perhaps. It's what you do about bathroom policy, gender confirming surgery, all of that. But to say that it's outright discriminatory and radical seems like a bit of a stretch. And the author throws like a little bit of a bone. He says, well, Shapiro is not affiliated with any hate group. Oh, gee, thanks. Experts in media, gender studies, and the radicalization of young men say that the commentator's content is prevalent in online extremist communities. So it's the old like logical fallacy they teach you in first year philosophy. The, Hitler is a vegetarian. I'm a vegetarian, therefore I'm like Hitler or something like that. It's like, so because someone liked a Ben Shapiro video and they might be extreme, you're extreme. And because Reed Brown didn't like it, it's radicalizing. So I'm starting to feel like I'm like desperately trying to connect the dots here, but I don't even think there's like a crayon with enough wax to like get from one dot to the other because they're so far away. And I posted about this on Twitter, and I had said, I think not uncontroversially, that this is a potentially defamatory thing. The author of the piece, a man by the name of Brock Wilson, ended up like seeking me out and responding to me on Twitter. I didn't tag him or anything. I wasn't interested in a Twitter fight, but he responded and decided to take issue with what he says was a bad faith tweet on my part. And what Brock Wilson says is, it was a 3-part tweet. He said, it feels disingenuous to suggest this is defamatory, or that the piece says simply watching Ben Shapiro amounts to radicalization. It says no such thing. In fact, I explicitly state that Shapiro is not affiliated with any extremist groups. Well, I say, look, you say that you say that Reed Brown's videos were increasingly extreme, and that's a lead-in to a quote where the most extreme thing mentioned, if you can even call it that, is that the guy saw a Ben Shapiro video on YouTube. So yeah, you did say it, and you can't say you didn't, and this is just an absurd hatchet job by CBC. And if it is defamatory, I hope Ben Shapiro does, in fact, file a lawsuit against CBC. So to talk about CBC defunding, which Maxime Bernier has argued he wants to do, Pierre Poilievre has argued he wants to do it, perhaps this could be like Exhibit A on that. That does it for us for today. We'll be back in a couple days' time with more of Canada's most irreverent talk show. This is the Andrew Lawton Show on True North. Thank you, God bless, and good day to you all.
Thanks for listening to The Andrew Lawton Show. Support the program by donating to True North at www.tnc.news.